Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Toon Review. Another live broadcast just discussing what Steve Bruce has actually improved at the club. I'm not sure that he's actually improved anything at all. I'm struggling to think of any particular reason why he has in his own mind the opinion that he's actually improved anything. I don't really think he has. I think he's a very, very poor manager, and I think he's had his time already at Newcastle United, which I think everybody seems to realise. I'm not so sure that Steve Bruce has got many weeks left in the job. I think it's going to come down to, Sheffield United for me is the big game. We all know that Sheffield United haven't won a game this season. Steve Bruce is going to be very much up against it in the coming weeks. I think realistically, even if we lost heavily to Arsenal, I don't think he's going to lose his job. I think what's going to happen is it'll destroy confidence. The fans will be on the backs, and it'll be the Sheffield United game that is going to be the crunch decider in all of this. So I do want to hear what you guys think as well in the comments about Steve Bruce and where you think he's actually improved the club. I'm not on here just to, have a go at Steve Bruce and say, oh, you're out of your mind. I want to try and find legitimate reasons where he thinks he's actually improved the team or the squad. For me, when you come into a manager's job and you want to improve things, it has to be done on the pitch, off the pitch, around the place as well, and get the fans on board. I haven't seen anything of that. Certainly on the pitch, I don't think we've improved one little bit. I know a lot of people have said in the past about, Pardew, other managers like that, like Joe Kinnear, etc., being poor. But for me, Steve Bruce has to be one of the worst. And yet he comes out week after week saying that he's improved the squad, he's improved the team, he's improved things around the club. But I'm not seeing it. I'm really not. And I want to get your guys' opinion as well. So do please put in the comments as quick as you can. We'll try and have a discussion about it because, I put on Twitter a few times that, when I listen to his press conferences, it's like he's delusional. Like he's living in a different world. Even after the matches, this man thinks he's done well and we've played well. And that for me is a massive worry because we haven't. I don't know what match Steve Bruce watches, but it's certainly not the same as 99.9% of the supporters. And for me, when you've got a manager standing there, he's making a complete fool of himself. There's no legitimate reason for his comments at all. And then he starts to have little niggles at the fans. That's not improving the team. That's not improving the atmosphere. When a new manager comes in, supposed to be a breath of fresh air, it never was with Steve Bruce. As soon as we were linked with him, when he was at Sheffield Wednesday, everybody's hearts just sank because we knew we weren't going to get anywhere with him. And it's a shame because had we gone for a decent manager or even kept Rafa, we might not be in the situation we're in now, having to watch the football that we're watching now. It's abysmal. And it's shocking, really, that we have to go through this. Good evening, Geordie. And you say Matty Longstaff development and quarterfinals of the Cups are the only two positives I can think of. Yeah, you're right. It's a good comment, Geordie, because if you look at Matty Longstaff, he's come in totally out of the cold. And this is Steve Bruce's fault as well. Matty was, there was all the rigmarole in the summer about Matty Longstaff signing and then not signing and then, going abroad or going on loan. Nothing came of it for a few weeks. Then he signed his new contract. Once he signed his new contract, you expect then him to go around the first team and be around the first team for a long period of time when we've pushed for a contract like that for so long. But Steve Bruce leaves him out completely in the cold. And it's why? And then suddenly he just comes in from nowhere to play against one of the best teams in the country in Man City and really sticks it up Bruce's backside by playing so well and forcing his way into the first team and meaning that he's got to stay there. If he drops Matty Longstaff now, for whatever reason, it's a criminal sin as far as I'm concerned. He needs to stay there. When we play Arsenal on Sunday, excuse me, it's a win or bust situation, really. I'm looking past the Arsenal game to the Sheffield United game. I think everybody seems to realise that it's do or die for Steve Bruce against Sheffield United. He's going too far with his comments now. I think every single supporter has turned their back on him now because of the snide remarks he's made. And for me, it's just not good enough. Oman says Bruce has barely even played Matty since being in charge. And you're right, he hasn't. And this is what I was saying in my preview video for the Arsenal game, so do try and catch that one as well. What I said was that he seems to have this. He's afraid to bring the youngsters in. If you look to the back end of last season when there was nothing to play for, we had young Watts as a centre back, and he put him on the bench a few times, granted. But after that, we never saw him. And then he's off to Plymouth on loan this season. So I think Steve Bruce is very reluctant to put the kids in, and that's what really annoys me about the man. We've got an opportunity on Sunday. I think everybody realises that we're not 100% going into this game at all. We're playing terrible football. We're not attacking any teams. We've scored 1 goal in 6 games. And Steve Bruce still says we're playing well. Now, if that's his sign of improvement, that scares the living crap out of me, because that is not improvement. It's where is the improvement on the pitch? I mean, yes, under Pardew, we played some woeful football at times, but on other times we played some really good football. And that's what gets me. There's not one bit of football this season that I think I've enjoyed us play. We've won a couple of games that maybe we shouldn't have. We've drawn a couple of games we shouldn't have. But improvement. Has the fans' mood improved since Steve Bruce took over? No, it hasn't. Yes, Mike Ashley is a long way to blame for this, and we all know that, and we know that it all boils down to Mike Ashley at the end of the day. But he's the one that brought in Bruce. Bruce is the manager of the football team. He picks the team. He does the tactics. Yet he comes out every week and says, well, we're getting better. We'll roll our sleeves up. We'll give it a go. That's not improvement. For me, improvement has to be when the team goes out on the pitch and your manager stands on the sidelines and he gets a pre-match interview and he turns around and says, do you know what? We're going to go for it today. The lads are really in the mood for it, and we're going to try and get 3 points. Not hope, not with a bit of luck. We're going to try, or we're going to get 3 points. Give the lads a bit of confidence going out on that pitch. They'll be seeing these pre-match interviews from Steve Bruce all the time thinking, hang on a minute, he's saying with a bit of luck and that he's got no faith in us. And that's, of course, where I think he's lost the dressing room. Kieran, good evening to you. You say he hasn't improved us. I'm sick of the pundits going on about Bruce has done a good job when he hasn't. Exactly. And that's one of my big bugbearers is the pundits. They come on all the time and the big Steve Bruce up. The first time that I maybe saw a chink in the armour about the Steve Bruce fan club was Souness and Keane on Sunday against Leicester City. At half-time, there was a few comments from the both of them that just said to me, maybe the tide is turning with a few of the pundits, and they're seeing Newcastle a bit more often now, and they're realising that the football is terrible. And they even mentioned the fans. Souness said, how must the fans feel watching this? Well, how do you think we feel? Is that an improvement from 18 months ago? It isn't. When we beat Fulham in Rafa's last game away from home, we thumped them 4-0. And, the atmosphere was incredible. Even before and after the game, the atmosphere was amazing. Everybody was bouncing. But then it turns around and Rafa goes, we're in a slump. We're disappointed. We're upset. And then Steve Bruce comes in. Now, for me, that is not turning things around. That is not making us feel better as fans. That is just basically kicking us in the balls again from Mike Ashley. But Steve Bruce is a very lucky man because there's no fans in the ground at the minute. And everybody knows that. Because there's no fans in the ground, he's getting away with it. Because he can go around saying, well, we've improved here, we've improved there. And nobody's there to judge him on that. Nobody's there to give him grief. The journalists certainly won't give him grief. Every press conference, we are desperate for the journalists to ask the crunch questions and put him under pressure. Lee Ryder did it a week ago, and Steve Bruce started to bend. He was flummoxed. He didn't know what to do. He panicked, and he just brushed the question off. But I want to see the reporters then go at him again and still, badger him with these questions that he's got to answer. Why is his tactics so bad? Why does he go defensive all the time? Why does he have snide remarks at the fans? All this comes to fruition, and it's not fair on the fans. But hey ho, Stephen, where is Maximum? Exactly. Where is he? This is the kind of thing that Steve Bruce is destroying the fans with for me, because he's telling lies. Yes, ASM may well have had COVID, and that's fair enough. And if he had, then, hope he gets better soon. But I think there's something else to this, because he hasn't been seen since before the Southampton game, way before the COVID issue at Newcastle. There was rumours going around then that he'd had a bust up. He was sent home. Nobody knows. The club won't come out and say anything. But for me, if Steve Bruce was a proper man and a manager, he would then say to the fans, look, this has happened with ASM. He's in France at the minute. We're trying to work things out with him. We want him back at the club. That's what's going on. But because he's not, he won't say a word on it. When he's pressed on it, he won't say a word on it. And that gets the fans' backs up. And that's the kind of man that Steve Bruce is. All these pundits coming out saying, oh, well, you know, he's got a lovely personality. He's a great man. No, he's not. Because a great man would not lie to the fans. And a great man would certainly not have a dig at the fans, especially when they're not in the ground. Because for me, that is just sly. Really sly. Geordie says, which other Premier League clubs would have appointed Bruce prior to Newcastle? Exactly, Geordie. Exactly. Nobody. Nobody would have got him. He was at Sheffield Wednesday. He was stale. He was rotting away. There was nothing there for him. Sheffield Wednesday, maybe they could have got promotion that year had they kept Bruce. That's what some of the fans were saying. But seeing the football that Bruce plays, there is no way that he would have got Sheffield Wednesday up. And what gets me is we actually paid compensation for this bloke. When there wouldn't be another Premier League team in the country touch him. Now, you watch what happens if one of the big teams loses their manager shortly, okay? Would they go for Steve Bruce, and Arsenal, and Manchester United? If Man United lost Solskjaer or Chelsea lose Lampard, because they're, you know, he's under pressure there. Do you think, honestly, that Roman Abramovich would have Steve Bruce anywhere near his top 100? No, not a chance. Absolutely not a chance. Liam, good evening to you. You said we've got worse, and if we sack Steve Bruce, his next job will be at an average championship team like QPR. Do you know what? Watching his football, I actually think that Steve Bruce, his football and his tactics are worse than championship. You know, and I'm sick of these people saying, oh, well, he got Hull to an FA Cup final. He did this, he did that with Wigan, he did this with Birmingham. So what? This is Newcastle United. You know, this is a much bigger team than any Wigan or, you know, Sheffield Wednesday or anybody like that. We should be playing the football that the likes of Liverpool, Man City, and I'm not saying, you know, them sort of players. What I'm saying is we should try and play football like that, how it should be played. You know, give a bit of excitement to the fans. And if we lost a game heavily, fair enough. We lose a game heavily, we move on. It doesn't matter. But at least we've tried to win a game of football. And that's the whole point of this video is, where are we improving? Because I ask myself every time I watch the Newcastle United team come out and play, and I'm thinking, right, from 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, where have we improved on this pitch? Because I don't think there's one position that we have. The situation with St. Maximin is like Ben Arthur under Pardew. Spot on, Liam. Spot on. It's exactly the same situation because there is a fallout somewhere, and somewhere along the line, someone is not being truthful with the fans. Now, that, for me, stops with the manager. I know Charlie and Ashley are very, you know, they never say anything, and that's always going to be the case. That is never going to change. While them two are running the club, nothing will change on that. Not one iota. We're not going to hear anything from them. But as the manager of the club, Steve Bruce, surely has to come out and tell us the real truth of what's going on with St. Maximin, because it's getting pathetic now. Do you think the likes of Bobby Robson or, you know, Rafa would actually lie to the fans and say that, you know, there's nothing going on? You know, Rafa would rather stand there, and Bobby Robson would stand there and say, look, or Kevin Keegan, look, we've got a problem with this player. We're trying to work things out. None of them managers would dare lie to the fans. It really pees me off because of the way this club is now and where it used to be to where it is. You know, Kevin Keegan coming out to the fans and explaining why he sold Andy Cole. You know, actually facing the fans face to face. Do you think this man would do that now? Not a chance in hell. Absolutely crazy. And on, I wasn't a massive fan of Rafa Benitez when he was here. I seem to be in the minority. I didn't appreciate something good till it was gone, I guess. That's fair enough. You know, not everybody's going to be a fan of every single manager. You know, did Rafa have his faults? Of course he did. You know, there was times I was sitting in that ground and I was yelling at Rafa to make a change or do something for the good of the team. But, you know, he made mistakes. But every manager makes mistakes. Steve Bruce is just one big mistake. And everything he does seems to be a mistake. Liam, I've spoken to Sheffield Wednesday fans on Twitter, and they wouldn't take him back. Same with Sunderland fans. Half my family are Sunderland fans. I've had to experience that pain in my life where, we went on a bad run against Sunderland and they were loving it. But when you look at the two North East teams, if you look back to Steve Bruce's comments, even with Aston Villa, they're all the same. That it's progress or, he's having gripes at the fans all the time. It's Groundhog Day with Newcastle United. But he's got it easier this time because there's no fans in the ground. And that's what really grinds at me because he knows he can get away with it. And Sheffield Wednesday fans wouldn't touch him because he's a traitor. He up and left. And he's done that a few times in his career. Now, is that the sign of a man with a good personality who's going to improve things in the dressing room? No. There's no trust there. Liam, he got Hull and Birmingham relegated. Exactly. His track record is a disaster, but his Premier League record is you handed that to a CV. You handed that CV to a chairman in the Premier League now and see what you'd get. You certainly wouldn't get a job unless you come to Newcastle. It's ridiculous. Stephen, good evening to you. Nice to see a fan wear his heart on his sleeve. Well said, mate. Thank you very much. I always do. I always have. Obviously, I brought this channel back recently because, a few years ago, the trolls got me off and let them get the better of me, and I just came off air. But I started it back up. I've had a lot of support from family. I've had a lot of support from friends and obviously you guys subscribing to the channel and helping me build it back up again. It's been fantastic. But I will always say how I feel. That's one thing about me. I won't bullshit anybody. I'll say how I feel. And if I feel griped about something, I'll say it. Not everybody agrees with it. Everybody has a different opinion in football. You don't have to be nasty about it. You can have conversations about it. If you disagree with a comment, talk about it. It's easy said. But thanks, Stephen. We move on to Sean. Good evening, Sean. Ashley paid more in compensation for Bruce than Rafa was asking for his full backroom staff. The biggest improvement Rafa wanted was for improvements to the training facilities. Spot on. Rafa, I think he saw that they were interested in Joe Linton. He didn't want to know about Joe Linton, and he's been proved right on that because Joe Linton, for me, is one of the biggest disasters in the last few years at Newcastle for the money we paid for him. The training facilities, you look at, the likes of Leicester, they've just opened a new one. Liverpool have just opened a new one. Teams are progressing, and this is my thing. Where's the progression off the pitch as well? There's no progression on the training facilities. Now, fair enough, that's down to Mike Ashley, a lot of it. But why isn't Steve Bruce banging on the door? I'll tell you why. Because he's a yes man and he has no balls to go into that Ashley's office and say, look, these training facilities are pathetic. We wonder why we have so many injuries within this team. I'll tell you why. The training facilities, they're absolutely godforsaken awful. There's no other words that can describe our training facilities, quite honestly. Vaping with Sean, good evening to you. I am Steve Bruce. I don't know what that means, but, fair enough. Liam, every manager has their faults, including Fergie. Exactly. But Fergie wouldn't stand for some of the crap that Newcastle have played this season. Can you imagine Shelvey just floating about the pitch in front of Alex Ferguson? He'd be yanked off. It doesn't matter what minute of the game it is, he'd be off. Because Fergie always wanted to progress, no matter how good his team was at the time. You look at the players that have come in for Fergie. He had the likes of Jaap Stam still playing well when Fergie got rid of him. But Fergie was looking for seasons ahead because that is what you call progression. Now, for me, Steve Bruce played under Fergie for a while. He should understand what progression is. If one manager progressed a club, then it has to be Fergie, or even Wenger for that matter. Wenger did an amazing job at Arsenal progressing them. It went a bit downhill towards the end of his career, fair enough. But it was progression, and that's what it's all about. Steve Bruce doesn't have it. Paul Wood, good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. As a manager, I'd be looking at what talent we have got in the academy rather than looking at useless loans. Alan last season only played him once. He gave a good assist and played well. Exactly. This is my point I made before, Paul. Just about his lack of ambition to bring any of the youth through. You look at this Peruvian Vilca. He was the next Solano when we brought him in, but now they're looking to ship him off to Carlisle. If he's that good, get him in the first team. Get him some first team action or get him training around the first team. Don't ship him off to Carlisle. If you're going to loan him out to a championship side where the championship is rough and tumble. It's hard work. It's a grind. If you want somebody to get used to English football, the Championship is where to put him. But the thing is, he's 22 years of age or 23. Why isn't he developing into a first-team player? This is the thing I don't understand. And it boils me up. It really does. Let's have a look. There's lots of comments coming in. Liam again, Steve Bruce has been at 6 rival clubs. Exactly. It just says it all about where his heart is. He goes where the money goes. Simple as that. And he knew that the chance to come to Newcastle was big money for him compared to what he would be getting at Sheffield Wednesday, especially given the fact that we had to give him so much bloody compensation. Absolute crazy. Geordie, pre-season was an eye opener. We got smashed 5-1 by Neil Warnock's Middlesbrough. If that wasn't an alarm bell, Geordie, then I don't know what was. Because when I saw that result, I was absolutely staggered. I thought, well, he must have put the kids out. But he didn't. And for me, that was a sight. If Warnock can go against Steve Bruce and do that, then what does that say for the rest of the Premier League season? The writing was on the wall. And it's crazy. It's just crazy. This progression word he uses nearly every single week. The man is deluded, and quite frankly, Sheffield United next week is his do-or-die game. It really is. His do-or-die game. Liam, I would say that the team he has at Hull and Birmingham is better than the team Rafa had. Possibly. I mean, Rafa didn't have the money. Let's look at that now. Rafa didn't have the money that was given to Steve Bruce. All right? Bruce has been given money, and nobody can deny that. Rafa was only looking for probably half the money Steve Bruce has had because he could identify quality players. Steve Bruce wanted to identify Joe Linton. Or maybe he's not Joe Linton because he was already sort of in before Bruce came, but you see what I mean. And the players that he's looking at now, they're all defensive. You know, we've let Rolando Aarons go to Huddersfield today. Good luck to the lad, because I hope he gets his career back on track. I always thought he was going to be a future star at Newcastle. Didn't quite work out. But that's another forward player gone. But the defensive players that he's been looking at, and I said all this in my transfer video the other day, I just don't get why we are so naive, so defensive, and wanting to defend all the time. We don't have to do that with the players we've got. If Steve Bruce wants to progress this club, then let the forward players do their job. Let them attack instead of sitting back for 90 minutes, because you're guaranteed on Sunday, when we take on Arsenal, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be backs against the walls. It's going to be, there you go, Arsenal, have the ball, see what you can do against us. And it's Arsenal coming into form right when they play us. And it's a huge, huge worry, the game on Sunday. I don't want us to get pummeled. That's all. I just want to see us go on the pitch. And because it's a knockout, it's the FA Cup, go and try and get something. Don't just sit for 90 minutes and let them have the ball. There's no point. But Steve Bruce will see it as progression if we get thumped 4-0. He'll somehow turn that round into progress. And that's what I mean about him being delusional. It's crazy. Stephen, do you think we have good days ahead when the takeover happens? 100%. You know, I was absolutely devastated when the takeover didn't happen, as most Newcastle fans were. We knew what would happen if that takeover went ahead. We knew that there were so many good things on the horizon, not just on the pitch, but inside the club, the back room, the directors, the whole board, the whole club was getting reshaped, but the area was getting reshaped as well. You know, Newcastle would have been thriving had that takeover gone through, but instead it failed because of, well, we know why, you know, Premier League corruption, things like that went on. And that'll all come out in the court case. But if we can get this takeover through, it's going to be a massive, massive jolt for us. We can actually compete again. Get a manager who wants to have a plan and put it in, and actually a proper plan that does progress the club further than where we are now. You know, we're not saying that if the takeover goes ahead, we'll suddenly be top of the league and we'll be signing sort of £100 million players, because that won't happen. You know, PIF said when they came in, they want to build the club up from its roots, because it's died in its roots at the minute. It is dead. And the takeover would just be it'd be incredible. Absolutely incredible. Liam, I've seen Fleetwood's training facilities. They've got better training facilities than us. And they was playing Sunday League football. You know what it is? I think Joey Barton came out with something a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, he's lost his job now. But with Fleetwood, he was amazed by how professional they were. And I've heard a few people say about lower league teams being a lot more professional than Newcastle. And to be fair, it's true. You look at the training facilities we've got and where the players have to go for ice baths and things like that. It's goddamn awful. It's pathetic. Now, is that progress? In 18 months that Steve Bruce has been there, we're still stuck in the same training ground. We're still stuck with the majority of the squad. He doesn't seem to have any man management because all he wants to do is be friends with the players. Now, that's the difference between him and a really good manager. You take Guardiola, Klopp, Ferguson in his time, Wenger in his time. They wouldn't stand for any shit like this. Anybody just not grafting on that pitch would be hauled away and they'd be out the club. There's too many players now have been bruised and just think they can stroll around and get away with it. And it's mental. Sean, I don't not like Steve Bruce. Well, I don't think many people do, mate, to be fair. I think certainly you can tell by this video, I'm not one of his biggest fans. I did honestly think that he was a decent bloke before he took this job. But the remarks he's made, the sly comments, all of that crap that comes with him now, nah, not for me. Not for me. Geordie, in my opinion, it's about time that the players start to take some responsibility and just ignore what Bruce is telling them to do. Exactly. And I said it with the guys on the other live stream on Monday night, which, by the way, is going to be a regular thing on a Monday night, probably around 8:30ish. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be every Monday night with those guys talking about the previous week's goings on at Newcastle. So that's something that is in stone now, and that's going to be every week. So do join us for that because it was a good one on Monday, and the more people we can get on, the better for that. But you're right. It's the senior players now have got to come through. Now, there has been talk that, Lascelles did fall out with Steve Bruce as well as St. Maximin over the tactics. But again, we don't know because nothing comes out. Nothing is said to the fans. If there's been disagreements, then there's ways of putting it to the fans. Just say, look, we've had a few disagreements. We're working things out. I'd rather them come out and say that than just say stupid things like, well, he's in France, he's recovering from COVID, or Lascelles, fair enough, Lascelles, he's back, gentle training now. I know what COVID can do. There is long-term effects of COVID. But I believe there was fallings out in this team well before the COVID thing hit. And I believe that that Steve Bruce has lost a lot of those players in that dressing room. A lot of them, including some of the youngsters, which doesn't do their confidence any good at all. Matthew Smith, what's your favourite food? Well, Sunday dinner. I'll be honest with you, a good Sunday dinner. My gran used to get absolute amazing Sunday dinners. She was a tremendous cook. And my fiance now is an absolute amazing cook as well, and makes the most awesome Sunday dinner. So thanks very much for that question. Liam, people would say we lost 6-1 against Leyton Orient under Chris Hughton. Yes, we did, but there was a difference then. There was a difference because you look at the games after that. I think we went on a really good run after we lost that preseason game. We went on such a good run. Now, the difference is Chris Hughton was organised, and Chris Hughton never took any crap either. He was a very quiet man, or he was certainly in front of the cameras and things like that. However, you could tell in the dressing room he had the motivation to do well, and he had the skills to get the best out of the players. Chris Hughton never had a fantastic squad. Yes, he had the likes of Nolan and Barton and Andy Carroll in his prime, but some of the players he had in that team weren't the best, but he got the best out of them. Now, there's a difference there, in my opinion, because Steve Bruce can't get the best out of these players. And it's simple as that. And there's not one bit of progression in 18 months. Sean, good evening. The money paid for Joe Linton, if it was 40 million, would have been better off on the training facilities. What has Joe brought to the squad? Nothing. We look like we are down to 10 each game. And this is what I put out against Leicester. And I got a fan coming back to me, very aggressively coming on to me saying that, Joe Linton was one of the best providers in the team. He was the best link-up man. And I'm thinking, my God, where is this guy getting what game is he watching? Because Joe Linton he started the game against Leicester very well. The first 10 minutes he was involved. Some nice touches, nice passes, and a few nice runs. But then he disappears. He goes out of the game. And you think for a man of that build, he gets knocked off the ball so easily. He can't trap a bag of sand. And he's just, you are right. We're with 10 men through the whole game. We struggle. And that's where I feel sorry for Callum Wilson. How do you think Callum Wilson feels sitting in the dressing room listening to Steve Bruce's post-match press conferences when he's saying, well, we're making good progress? Callum Wilson must be sitting there thinking, right, I've had one opportunity to score today, or I haven't even had a cross to try and get on the end of. Now, granted, we had a couple of opportunities against Leicester, which we should have scored. But that's one game. One game. It's not good enough. It's just not good enough. Liam, we've been linked with Joshua King. I would take him, definitely. But will Steve Bruce, it's all right, the paper saying we've been linked with such and such or whatever, but would Steve Bruce take Josh King? Because, in my opinion, probably not, because he's a forward-thinking player. And again, this is my worry with Steve Bruce about forward players. He's very reluctant to buy them. He's more looking defensively. I mean, Phil Jones and Danny Rose came up again yesterday. Now, is that progression? Signing Danny Rose, who didn't want to come back to us anyway after his loan period finished, wasn't at all respectful about the club. Phil Jones was finished years ago. You ask any Man United fan about that. It's worrying. But I'd definitely take Joshua King, and I think he'd love to link up with Wilson again. Geordie, it will be a training game for Arsenal on Saturday if there isn't a change in attitude. Exactly. But is there going to be a change of attitude? Because this progression thing that Steve Bruce goes on about has to come from inside the dressing room as well. He has to be able to motivate those players to go out on that pitch and think, right, we're not going to get a Tonkin tonight because we're going to go on the attack. And every Newcastle United fan can see that when they go on the attack, they are stronger. We are not a team to sit back and defend. We look better when we attack. If that makes any sense, we defend better when we attack. And attacking is kind of our form of defense. But again, not in his eyes. And it worries me because every single fan can see it, Geordie, apart from him. Tom Hardman, each season we say NUC will go down but stay up. I just feel the same this season, but in parts can see them going down under him. Sheffield United down, others starting to improve. Bruce is not fit for Premiership. Exactly. We know Bruce isn't fit. His record is there for all to see that he's absolutely garbage. His managerial record in this division is useless. In fact, it's worse than useless. However, Sunday, for me, is just an opportunity to put the kids in. Sheffield United is the game. If we do not beat Sheffield United, and I mean beat them convincingly, I'm not talking about 1-0, 2-1 or anything like that. This is a team who has drawn 2 games all season, has never looked like winning a game of football. So if we don't go down there and actually attack them and try and score lots of goals, he needs to be fired immediately after the game. But will he? That is the question. But Mike Ashley's walking a very thin tightrope here because he's listening to Steve Bruce saying, well, the club's made progression. Mike Ashley isn't stupid. He wouldn't be where he is if he was stupid. Mike Ashley knows that Steve Bruce is probably talking utter bollocks, and he's looking at the table thinking, well, really? He can't afford to wait too long because of the McLaren situation. He was too long with that. He blew it. But now there's a takeover in the midst of everything here. If we go down, Ashley loses a lot of money. And money is the biggest thing to Mike Ashley. So if we lose to Sheffield United or even draw, he's got to pull the trigger because we are in big trouble. Like you say, Tom, Fulham have got games in hand now and Fulham are starting to improve. And it's scary to think that they could catch us, but they can because 8 points is nothing. Do you think our midfielders are good enough to dictate games and get more possession, or do you think it's managers' tactics that's forcing our defensive hoofball smash and grab? It's definitely the manager. I mean, we look at our midfield now and we think, right, we've got some talented players in that midfield. Whatever people think of Shelby's work rate, okay, the man has talent. The man can pick a pass out. That's not even up for debate. The man knows how to pass a ball, but he's not been allowed to. because our forward players are coming so far back. Shelvey gets the ball. He's got nobody to give it to. It gets punted 40 yards up the pitch. But the opposition comes straight back onto us. But you could see this word progression under Rafa, and I don't keep meaning to go back to Rafa versus Bruce because that's not what this is about. I'm talking about setup. Now, you look at the midfielders under Rafa, how much Sean Longstaff wanted to get forward. You know, Shelvey was picking out passes to Rondon, etc., and Perez because they were making runs. Callum Wilson's making the runs, but he's the only one up there. So even if the ball reaches Callum Wilson, he's got nobody to pass to. And that's been evident in a lot of games this season where Callum Wilson gets to the edge of the box, he looks up, there's no bugger there to pass to. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Liam says, I'd rather have a Leicester model than a Man City model. Yes, I would rather, let's face it, Leicester have had a fantastic progression. They won the Premier League, but everybody expected them to just disappear after they won the Premier League and sink away down to the bottom half of the table again and, a one-off. It's not a one-off for Leicester because Leicester had owners with ambition. Leicester have managers with ambition who progress the club. Brendan Rodgers left Celtic, which is a massive club. I know it's in Scotland, but it's a massive club. He came to Leicester because he wanted to build and progress the club to the next level. And he's doing that. Yes, they've had some oddball results this season, but there's a few teams you could say that about. But it's the progression thing that Brendan Rodgers looks at and thinks, right, there's a good squad here. I can progress this club forward again and challenge for things, whether it not be for the title, but top four, challenge in Europe, do something in them departments. That's progression. That's what it's all about. That's what being a football manager is all about. Thinking, right, where is our win coming from? How can I get this club further up the table? But all this plonker's remit is to keep us in the Premier League, which he's probably not going to do. It's mad, some of the stuff that he comes out with. Tom, if takeover happened, NFC could have got Poch, who has now gone to PSG. Some would have wanted Bilic gone to China, who is available currently. There's only really Eddie Howe. Now, many people have their opinions on Eddie. Personally, I think he'd do a good job. People come on to me and say, he took Bournemouth down. Yeah, he had one bad season with Bournemouth. Look what he did before that. You talk about progress, Steve Bruce. You look at what Eddie Howe did with Bournemouth. Moving up the leagues and into the promised land of the Premier League, a small club like that. I think it's a remarkable achievement that Eddie Howe did down there to get a club like Bournemouth into the Premier League. That is progression on a massive scale. And yes, they got relegated, but, it could only last for so long with the budget they had. But they're doing well again in the Championship, and they may well come up again next season. But I just think that the football that Bournemouth played under Eddie Howe, I remember them coming up here a few times and whacking us at St James's Park when Richie played for them. They were great to watch. But we haven't seen good football for years, and that includes Rafa, to be fair. Not a lot of matches you could sit there and say, wow, we were scintillating today. When was the last time we could say that about Newcastle? Maybe the 4-0 win away at Fulham, fair enough. We were really good that day. But this is what I mean. Managers that have ambition and progress is all they want. Steve Bruce, you have not progressed this club. You are not progressing the club because we're stuck near the bottom of the league again. We're not moving forward. We're not going anywhere. We're not challenging for anything. And that'll just be highlighted in the FA Cup. Geordie says, ice bath in wheelie bins. How pathetic was that? And the club couldn't deny it because it was photographed. It was there for all to see. I mean, a Premier League team having to have ice baths in wheelie bins. Where does that end? You look at Mike Ashton, you think, as an owner, you would be embarrassed by that, wouldn't you? If you were any sort of decent owner who cared about your club. You would look at that and think, my God, that is a huge embarrassment to me and the club. It's just rotten. But he doesn't think like that, does he? Unfortunately. But like I say, if I was Steve Bruce and I was a manager coming in and seeing that, that's one of the first things I would be banging on his door saying, hang on a second, Mike, this has to be changed and changed immediately. This is what I want for this club. so we can progress. But no, it doesn't happen. Sean, Leicester's new training facilities look fantastic. They paid 90 million, but that also included buying the land. Under Ashley, we are going backwards. Worst stats in the Premier League with Bruce. Said it perfectly, Sean, to be honest. You know, Leicester, you know, when you look at their new training facility, it is fantastic. It's absolutely world class, as is Liverpool's new one. But we've said this before. This is clubs with ambition and progression in mind. Leicester probably knew that they couldn't progress any further unless they built a training ground for what they want to achieve. And the same for Liverpool. They are now league champions. They wanted to move to that next level and keep building, even though they were league champions. There's still improvements to make within the club, including the training facilities. And that's, again, what Newcastle United aren't shown. And this is where I go back to Steve Bruce. He's not knocking on the door asking for anything like that or saying, is this going to happen, Mike? What's happening here? We're having to do this. Our players are picking so many injuries up because we've got the worst training facilities possibly in the top 2 divisions, which is pathetic to say, but that's how it is. Liam, I've progressed Chesterfield on FM21 more than Steve Bruce has progressed us in the last 18 months. You know, we're all football managers at heart, aren't we? I mean, I play FM21 as well when I'm relaxing. Just, well, try and relax on it, but you tend to lose your temper sometimes. But, you know, we all have opinions of what's best for the club and how to move the club forward. But it always boils down to the men that are running the club. And if we get somebody in who is a manager who is delusional and thinks that he's doing really well and thinks that he has progressed the club, we have no chance. You're right, Liam. Progression is moving up, being better, doing what you can to expand what you've already got. You know, we've got a wonderful football stadium there at Newcastle. We've got amazing fans who Mike Ashley knows will back the club 100% all the time. You know, yeah, over the years there's been a few empty seats, but we still pretty much packed the ground out, if we're being honest. But the one thing that us as fans haven't seen is progress, is moving up the division, is improving the training facilities, is improving the club in general. Nothing like that has happened. The club has gone backwards over the last few years. It's dying. It's just not, you know, even visiting fans or fans of other clubs, their second team used to be Newcastle because they loved the fans, they loved the club, the way we played, all that sort of thing. You know, and I've got a lot of Leeds fans who follow me, and they're very, very complimentary about Newcastle, saying what great fans we are, a great club, and they want us to succeed and do well, which is lovely of them to say, because I've got a lot of friends who are Leeds fans, and I'm glad to see Leeds back. There is another club that wants progression. Bielsa, yes, they've had some crazy results this season, but he wants progress at that club. And boy, has he done it. He's got them back into the Premier League after, 19 odd years away. And look at them now, playing some crazy football, but it's a joy to watch. It reminds me of what we were like back in the 90s, but, you know, it's not like that anymore, unfortunately. Liam, would Eddie Howe come if we sack Bruce? This is the big question, really, that every Newcastle fan asks, is who would come in to work under Mike Ashley? And there isn't many managers out there, certainly with top-class CVs, who would come and work for Mike Ashley. Because if any manager comes in for an interview with either be Charnley or Ashley, and they sort of talk about progression of the club, they're going to hear nothing back, saying, well, we're not spending money on the training ground, or we're cutting the wage bill as best we can, or you can get a few loans in here and there. A top-class manager is not going to take that kind of crap. He's going to walk out, say, look, no, sorry, this job's not for me. I'm not going to bother. And that's fair enough. You know, you can't expect to get a top-class manager in. Eddie Howe, he's been out of work a long time. Newcastle is a massive club compared to what he had at Bournemouth. So that may just tip him towards the job if he was offered it. But it is a big worry to every Newcastle United fan. Who would we get in if Steve Bruce was sacked? Who could we attract? Because it's all right sacking Steve Bruce, but it's who would come in the meantime. And we know Ashley's got his pals. and it would probably be another Ashley Yes man, which is sad to say, really, but that's just how it is. Right, let's have a look at some more comments. Loads coming in. Thank you very much for all your comments, by the way. Really, really pleased. Chris Hughton did well at Brighton, and we will see a different Nottingham Forest team next season. Exactly, because again, Steve Bruce wants to bring a club that has not progressed in recent years, bring them back. He did it with Brighton to an extent, didn't he? He did a superb job at Brighton. I thought he was very unlucky to be sacked at Brighton, to be fair to him. But he wants to be in a job where he knows that he's going to get progression. Now, will he get the back end of the board? The board have been a bit crazy down at Nottingham Forest in recent months and years, so it might be a bit difficult for him. But he's took that job because he wants to progress a club. He wants to get something good on his CV. And Steve Bruce isn't like that. He just wants to sit and, well, you know what. Liam again, apparently Sam Allardyce wants Danny Rose at West Brom. He can have him. He can have him. Just, no problem at all. Every Newcastle fan tweet Danny Rose, say, go and play for Sam. They're going down. Sam's going to fail at keeping them up. There's no doubt about it. They are one of the poorest sides in the Premier League because they weren't backed. And when Bilic was sacked, I said this all along, he wasn't backed in the summer. The board expected him to perform miracles with a championship squad. You can't. You just can't. And that's where we've gone stale. We haven't brought good enough players in. We've brought Callum Wilson in, don't get us wrong, an ASM. But at the minute, ASM's AWOL and Wilson just doesn't get any service. And how long is it going to be before Wilson wants away? He wants to be back in the England side or the England setup anyway. And he's not going to get that chance under Steve Bruce. Whatever we think of the FA and the bias towards North East clubs, which is there, undoubtedly there, we have to also come to the conclusion that Callum Wilson will be wanting away if he does not get opportunities to score goals. And he's not going to get that under Steve Bruce. I smell 07-08 Derby team. What I mean was only losing against Sheffield United. Exactly. We know what happened against Derby, and it could be Groundhog Day. There's a lot of Groundhog Days going on at Newcastle United, and that's a bit of a worry as well because, we lost to Derby that year when they were one of the worst Premier League sides anybody had seen, but we lost to them. And the same could happen again next week. And honestly, if we lose that game, it will break my heart as a Newcastle fan. I would be devastated, absolutely devastated. And yes, I'd probably lose my temper on the video again, etc., etc. But that's me just being passionate about my club. I can't help that. That's just who I am. But I don't want to have to do that. I would love to come on after the Sheffield United game and say, wow, what a performance that was. We've absolutely destroyed them and good for the lads. I don't want Newcastle United to lose any games. Do I want the manager? No, I don't. And I know that to get rid of him, Newcastle will have to lose a few more games. But I don't want the team to lose games. As a fan, I want us to win as many as possible. So it's really an awful situation to be in when you want a manager out, but you don't want your team to lose. Matthew Smith says, would you like it at St James's Park when it finally opens if the hospitality staff came around the stadium with roast dinners so you can enjoy a warm roast dinner as you watch a match? That would be incredible. I could just see now, just half-time, being there ready, and you just go back to your seat at half-time eating a nice roast dinner. There's nothing better. Nothing better. Sean, if Ashley backs Bruce, who would you like to see replace him? But who would want the job of working with Ashley and co? We've just discussed this about Eddie Howe. The big question is exactly that, Sean. Which manager is going to come in? Because any manager that wants to come into a job wants to progress the club that he's coming into. Otherwise, what's the point? If you're not going to progress the club you're going into, what is the point? There is no point. Absolutely no point. If I went for a job now at a football club and I went in there and sat down and said, right, where have we been the last few seasons? Right, this is where I see the club progressing. This is where I want to take them. Anybody in the right mind would do that. But again, we want Bruce out, and then the flip side of that is, who the hell are we going to get in? It's just a vicious circle, to be honest. Right, let's have a look. Geordie, Mike Ashley isn't football minded. He's a businessman, and once the football starts having an impact on his finances, Bruce will go. This is my hope coming up to the Sheffield United game, because if we do lose the Sheffield United game, the stage we're at in the season, he has to pull the trigger. He has to. This is what I'm saying before about Mike Ashley being a businessman. He doesn't get where he's at today without being ruthless in certain circumstances. And if he thinks he's going to lose money through the takeover, if we go down, which we will, he'll lose a fortune. So is he going to take that risk and say to Steve Bruce, oh, don't worry, continue on doing the job? It doesn't matter if we're relegated. Of course it does. He will be worried. He will be worried. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that he'd be worried. Werner says, I feel like Shelby lost motivation because the club is showing no ambition. Yes, and this is what a lot of fans forget, I think, sometimes, is when you're a player and you want to succeed and you want to do well. I said about Callum Wilson before, wanting to be in the England team. He will want to get back into that setup. But at the minute, he's playing for a club that has a remit of just surviving in the Premier League. So that is playing defensive football week in, week out, even against the lower league teams. And players will get fed up. But this is the point, again, earlier in the video. Maybe it's about time that these senior players started to just say to Steve Bruce, right, we've had enough of this. We've got the players in this squad who can do a job on some teams. And we have. You know, you look at the forward players we've got, we could do a lot of damage to some teams. But unfortunately, Steve Bruce doesn't see it that way. He just wants to collect a point here or 3 points there and just survive. But the players themselves, if they have any ambition, they'll be sick and tired of hearing Steve Bruce say, you know, we're making progression. We're rolling with sleeves up. We're doing this. We're doing that. It's all bollocks. Liam says you could put most League One teams in the Scottish League and they would still win the league. Yes. I mean, yes, you could. But what I'm talking about on Brendan Rodgers' side is he saw that there was a project there at Leicester. He sees what is there, what they've done, and what they can achieve. You know, he's gone down there, had a good conversation with the chairman, and the chairman has obviously explained what he wants from the manager, but the manager's also explained what he wants to do in regards to progression and moving that club to the next level. And for me, that's exactly what he's doing. He's doing a grand job down there, and he is starting to change that team around. Anon says Allegri, Sarri, Marco Silva, Eddie Howe, Patrick Vieira, Tuchel. There's some very good names there, but do you honestly look at those names, apart from maybe Eddie Howe, and say which one of those names would actually come and work under Mike Ashley in the present circumstances? Because I can't see any of them doing that. Maybe to a degree Marco Silva, but would we want Marco Silva? He doesn't exactly have the greatest Premier League record with Hull and Everton. I think Everton took a chance on him and he failed big style there. But there is some big names there. Now, if a takeover happened, yes, I think a lot of those names across the screen now would be very, very interested in coming to the club, undoubtedly. But working under Ashley and Charnley, that is the stumbling block we have once Steve Bruce goes. If Ashley and Charnley are indeed still in charge of the club, we need a takeover. We need it to go through quicker more than ever now, the situation we find ourselves in. Liam, Bournemouth got a 12k seat stadium. There are clubs who ain't been in the Premier League have bigger stadiums. Exactly. 12,000-seater stadium, and Eddie Howe brought them into the Premier League. Now, anybody that says that isn't progression must be on something, quite frankly, because that is progression right there. He's brought them up from the lower leagues, right up to the Premier League. And like I say, he had a bad season that got relegated because the funds weren't there. He didn't have the budget to bring some big players in. I think they did spend a bit of money, mind. Let's not get too... you know, it's definitely, I think with Eddie Howe, you know, I think he spent big on 2 players that summer before they got relegated. And for me, they didn't work out. But Eddie Howe, I will always say, is a fantastic manager for what he did at Bournemouth. Nobody can deny that. But, you know, a team like Newcastle is much bigger than Bournemouth, but doesn't have any ambition like Bournemouth did. Michael Kelly said Paul Howe couldn't hack it at Burnley. He couldn't. No, you're right. He did have a tough time at Burnley. But has he gained more experience since those days at Burnley? You've got to remember, Eddie Howe is still very young when it comes to manager ages. So when he was at Burnley, he was extremely young. I think he learned a lot of lessons while he was there. And yes, it didn't work out. He couldn't hack it at Burnley at the time. He went back to Bournemouth and brought them on again. And I think that's where he's probably learned a big lesson. You know, he's matured, and Burnley was too big for him at that age, I think, anyway. But you're right, he did have a bad time at Burnley. But I'll still say to this day, he's better than what we've got there now. I'm a season 3 on FM 21 with Chesterfield, and no one has employed Steve Bruce. What a surprise. Even a computer game doesn't want to even employ him. It doesn't surprise me in the slightest. Paul says, is it about time that Bruce was asked the question by a journalist, are you forced to play Joe Linton? This comes up every week on Twitter, and no journalist has ever asked him that question. You know, there has to be something in his contract. You can't tell me that he's played this many games, been this bad, and not got something in his contract that he has to play a certain amount of games every season. Otherwise, I do not see what Steve Bruce sees in him. Because for me, and other people have said it on here, it is like playing with 10 men. And it's nothing against Joe Linton. I don't have any personal gripe with Joe Linton. He's just not good enough. You know, that's the thing. He got some horrific stuff on Instagram and stuff like that, which is pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And personally abusing the players is pointless, right? It's not his fault he's not good enough. It's not his fault that he got a £40 million price tag. That's the fault of whoever scouted him. And that's what pays me off. Somebody has made a lot of money from that deal. An absolute fortune from that deal. Michael Kelly says, what's happened to Charnley? He was at the game on Sunday, wasn't he? All wrapped up in his scarf and hat and snood or whatever he was wearing. But again, it's like you say, nobody knows because these guys are invisible half the time. They don't communicate with the fans. And you can't... Steve Bruce talks about progression. You can't progress under people like Charnley and Ashley. There's no chance. Kevin Keegan worked that out the second time he came. Because you know what Keegan was like the first time he came. He wanted to progress. John Hall backed him all the way for progression. But it doesn't happen like that with Ashley and Charnley. And Keegan learned that. And that's why he said, you know, what he said about them in the past. Because he knew straight away it wasn't going to happen. Geordie says, surely someone who is football-minded would get all of the players together and find out from their own opinions about how the club is able to move forward instead of going 1,000 back. Again, Geordie, this is about the players wanting to actually do something about the situation and caring about the club. You know, we always see a lot of the players coming out on social media saying, oh, I love the fans, I love them, I love the club, I love the stadium. Prove it. Prove it to us that you do. And if you want progression in this club you're playing for and you want ambition, you want to win something, prove it to us. Do something about it. Brian says, Bruce Hoop, no shape, no style, no hope. Couldn't have summed it up any better. There is no shape, there's no style, there's no tactics. The man does not have a plan B. Maybe he does have a plan A when they go out, but that plan A is to sit behind the ball for 90 minutes and try and catch them on the break on the odd time, like we did at Spurs, where we got a lucky penalty and we equalised. He's had so many lives this season, Steve Bruce. I think finally they have run out. And that's all we can keep our fingers crossed for. That finally the good luck has run out. Wino Fox says, I feel sorry for players like Callum Wilson who play under Steve, must really regret not going to Villa. Phew, I tell you what, that's a good shout because Villa were interested and he might be sitting at home looking back and thinking, I've made the wrong move here. I know he came because, you know, obviously his mates were here. You know, Fraser was on the verge of signing. Matt Ritchie was already here. But Villa, as much as, you know, we've had gripe with Villa fans over the years, there's another team that wants to progress. You know, and it's just, they've got a young, hungry, up-and-coming manager sitting in the sidelines as his assistant in John Terry, who knows the game inside out. Whatever you think of the bloke, he does. But that is a club, again, that wants to progress, that wants to show ambition. They survived by the skin of the teeth last season because of a dodgy goal line system. But this season, they've pulled the socks up and thought, right, we're going to do better this year. And they've got some fantastic players. But unfortunately, that's not what we have. Tom says, normally cup games are something to look forward to, but Sheffield United is bigger and chance of silverware is what people want. NUFC just want to stay up. It's sad to see for years now. Exactly. You know, it gripes on me when we get the cup final day, and you know, you see all the fans having a fantastic day out. Well, not recently, obviously, but you know what I mean. Over the years, and you think, God, I wish Newcastle was there. When Newcastle got there at the old Wembley a couple of times, it was a fantastic day out. It was, the atmosphere was amazing. It was great to see our club in a cup final. But now that just seems like a pipe dream. For Newcastle to get anywhere near that now is just a pipe dream, and that is the really sad thing about it. But hey ho, life goes on. A few more before we end the show. Liam says if fans are allowed in, I think Leeds would challenge for Europe because of the fans. Exactly, Leeds have got some tremendous fans. I've got big respect for Leeds. I love the Leeds fans. They're very similar to us. They're just as passionate as us, the Leeds fans. And for me, Leeds are back where they belong. And I'm not sort of bigging them up or anything. I'm just being honest. I think the fans are very similar to us. They've been through the mire. They know what it's like to have terrible owners who don't give a damn about the club and end up going down. If anyone can warn us about that, it's Leeds United. Tom says, years ago, NUFC were great to watch every time Premier League is on. I watch Leeds, can always get entertained. Exactly. Leeds are the new entertainers, without a shadow of a doubt. And yes, they lose some, they get a hiding here and there, but my God, they're good to watch. Absolutely fantastic. Sean says to all season ticket holders, keep an eye on the club's website as they're about to issue the next set of refunds. If you miss the deadline, then you miss out. Ashley calling the pounds again. Well, the thing is, Sean, it's how they go about issuing this, because the communication from the club is so bad that a lot of the fans have missed out in the past. It's tragic, but keep with the great work. Cheers, Sean. It means a lot. Thank you very much. If you are new to the channel, by the way, and you've just come across this live stream, do hit the subscription button. I'm very, very close to getting 500 subscribers. I want to build this as big as I possibly can. As a lot of you are aware, I don't work due to an illness, so this is quite my full-time thing. I love doing it, and I want to build the channel as big as I can get it. So all the subscriptions, all the likes and everything like that, help me do that. So thank you very much. So thanks for the comment, Sean. Jody says, if Bruce was sacked tomorrow, the board would look at managers like Tony Pulis and Mark Hughes. Is that really a step forward from Bruce? Exactly, Jody. This is the worry. When Bruce goes, who's he looking at? Because, I mean, would he dare bring Pulis or Mark Hughes in? Would he actually dare do that? Well, probably would, actually, because he's that kind of guy. A few last comments now. I wish Shearer was the manager. I'd love Shearer to be the manager. I think he'd do a damn sight better job than Steve Bruce. You know, people go on about Shearer when he was manager and we went down. He didn't stand a chance of keeping us up that season. Not a chance. He was just brought in by Mike Ashley for a publicity stunt, to be honest. There was no way he could have got us out the mire that year. Some managers suit different teams. Exactly, Liam. It's all about the team, but it's all about what you say of how you want to build that team and how you want that progression inside the club. That's what it's all about. And Steve Bruce doesn't want to progress. And in a way, he's come out and said that, hasn't he? Because he's come out and said he doesn't want, his remit is to stay in the Premier League. That's his. There's no him turning around saying, Mike actually wants to keep us in the Premier League. However, I have my sights a lot higher than that. Why doesn't he come out and say that? Because he's a yes man. I've seen people say if it wasn't for Mike Ashley, we would have ended up like Bury. You know what? Maybe you might, maybe we won't. We don't know that. We don't really know what the ins and outs of the financial situation were. Hey, Lee, mate, how you doing? Good to see you on. Lee says Bruce out. He's effing crap. Perfectly said, mate. Perfectly said. Liam says West Ham will link with Wilson. Again, you know, you've got to think Callum Wilson came probably because he was given that option by the fact that Matt Ritchie was there and Fraser was going to be signing as well. And, you know, coming all that way from Bournemouth, it's a long way. It's a big move, but he's got mates up here. And that was kind of what he probably looked at more than anything. But I wouldn't have thought that when Bruce sold him the job at Newcastle to come and do, that he wouldn't have said, oh, by the way, you're only going to get the odd penalty to try and chance of scoring a goal. You'll be defending most of the match. You can guarantee your ass that Steve Bruce didn't say that to him. But there you go. Right. Lee says, Paul, bottom clubs are looking at strengthening the squad. We're screwed at this rate, especially under Bruce. Exactly. We are, because he's looking at defensive players. Joshua King's been mentioned, but we've had a chat about that as well. You know, is that just the media talking, or because for me, Bruce wants defensive players? It makes me mad to see Newcastle United like this. I think you know how I feel on it, Lee. I've lost me rag quite a few times on videos this season. Michael Kelly, good chat, Paul. Thanks, mate. Appreciate that. I reckon making a move for Steven Gerrard after he's got a league title for Rangers would be a good move. His name alone attracts play. Exactly. But would he come under Mike Ashley? Steven Gerrard has seen Newcastle's decline. He's seen us slip down the league. He's seen where we are now from where we used to be. And he will know in his own mind that all the kerfuffle about Mike Ashley. So there you go. Final one of the night comes from Tom, and Wolves improving since coming up from Championship. Leicester are in Europe. Southampton are right up there again as well. And the manager crying after the game because he wants to progress. That's pure passion. Exactly. That's what it's all about. It's about passion. It's about wanting to do well. I would try for Duncan Ferguson. Now, there is a man with passion, undoubtedly. There is a born winner in there. And Geordie says, I would understand a club like Blackpool were in the Premier League and their manager came out with that. The remit is to stay in the Premier League. You would understand that, but a club the size of Newcastle, it's wrong. Perfectly said, mate. Perfectly said. It is wrong. Newcastle, you know, you're not being disrespectful to Blackpool there by any stretch of the imagination. That's the case. You know, Blackpool's remit would be to stay in the league. Newcastle are a huge club. But hey-ho, Gerrard has links with Rafa. Yes, he does. So he would be talking to Rafa. If Gerrard was ever, you know, had the opportunity of getting the job, I'm sure he would speak to Rafa and say, what's the chances of progression at this club? Zilch. Lee, brilliant channel, Paul. Keep it up, being sharing for you. Thanks, mate. That really does help if you can share the channel with all your mates as well. Tell them about it. I hope you enjoy what I'm doing. You know, I've spent a lot of money on the setup in here with the green screen microphones and lights and things like that, and obviously a camera to film on. So that's what it means to me. I've spent quite a bit of money doing this and setting this all up because I want to give it a good go, and I want to do this for a long time, as long as time will let me, really. So thank you very much, Lee. Really appreciate that, mate. Excellent show, Paul. Look forward to the next one. Thanks, Geordie. Obviously, keep an eye on Twitter as to, you know, when we're doing the next one. But don't forget, Monday nights now, I think I'm going to call us the Four Horsemen of Newcastle. I know that's a bit of a daft name, but there'll be me, Sharky, Pete, and John Sinclair on again on Monday night, round about 8 o'clock. Keep an eye on Twitter for that. That's going to be every week with a review of the previous week's goings on at the club. All the best, Paul. Great show. Thanks, Paul. Really appreciate that, mate. And Liam, Norwich played better football than us and went down as they don't have rich owners. Norwich are a yo-yo club. I would hate to be Norwich, quite frankly. They go up and down. It's bizarre. But anyway, that's it, guys, for tonight. If you haven't already seen my Arsenal preview video, do go and have a look at that. It's only about 8 minutes long, just talking about what I think about the game on Sunday. And also, I'll be doing the review of the game probably on Saturday night, straight after the game, which is on BBC One at 8. I think it's 8 o'clock kickoff. Oh, no, it's 5:30 kickoff. Sorry. I do apologise for that. 5:30 kickoff, so I'll probably be doing the review straight after the game. So by the time I edit it and get it up and running, it should be about 10 o'clock when it comes on. But hey-ho, those are what you do when you're on YouTube, I guess. But there's much more live streams because I've had such a good interaction with everybody on here. It's been fantastic. So many people have come on and fire in the comments. That's what it's all about, doing a live stream, interacting with everybody rather than just sitting here talking to a camera, talking to myself. It's good to have loads of people on, asking questions, getting opinions, and having a chat about the football club that we love. So thank you very much for that. Right, in the meantime, keep an eye out for more videos. If you do know anyone else that wants to subscribe, please make sure you pass the channel on and also hit the like button for us because it does help build the channel. Thank you very much for watching tonight. It's been a pleasure, guys. Catch you soon.